This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Jackie O and you're listening to Militantly Mixed.
Yo, this is Rashani from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
ManeHustle Media podcasts are recorded on the ancestral lands of the Chumash, Tongva, Karankawa, and Hohokam people, and I wish to pay my respects to the people of those nations, both past and present. Hey y'all, welcome to Militantly Mixed, the podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your Sir Auntie, Sharmane Fury, aka the Blasian Blurred, the busiest mixed race bi-gendered, bisexual, polyamorous, atheist, comic book nerd, cat mom, and two-time Asian American Podcasters Association's Golden Crane Award-winning podcaster in this podcasting game. This is episode 188, and today I am joined by friend and fellow mixed Blasian, Rohan Zhou-Lee, organizer from the Blasian March and someone that I've become really close friends with over the last couple of years. Rohan actually bailed me out on this episode. As a byproduct of all this travel I've been doing, I haven't had a chance to bank recordings of episodes like I have done in the past. Usually I have a handful, 10, 20 interviews recorded, and then I pick and choose as the weeks come up of which ones I want to release at a given time. But because I've been traveling so much since August, I haven't really been able to do that. And so in the last couple of weeks, I've been recording, editing, and putting them up pretty much within a day or two of the drop date, which is why sometimes I haven't had an episode. I am working on building up that bank again, but unfortunately, I just didn't happen to have my planned guest available to record today. So I reached out to my mixed Asian quintet and asked if anybody had some free time. And luckily, Rohan did and joined me to have a conversation about being mixed, queer, and nerdy. So that's what you're going to hear today. Rohan and I got to hang out at New York Comic Con a couple weeks back. But the greater part of this conversation sort of happens near the end, where we kind of talk about the complications of ending up in a mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream nerd space like a Comic Con, while also just existing as a Black or brown, queer, nerdy person. Even when those mainstream places try to make room for us, it's not always done very well or very thoughtful, or it's very clear that they didn't have one of us in the planning to make sure that the space was actually inclusive and not accidentally inclusive, if it is at all. So we do talk about some places in which the inclusivity wasn't very strong, and then just generally kind of nerd out about a couple of things that we were really excited that we got to experience together while we were at New York Comic Con. But I think this opens up a bigger conversation too. So after you listen to this, you'll probably hear us talking about it again in the future, about what it means to create properly inclusive spaces where they don't forget that Black and brown people also come in queer, and Black and brown people also come in disabled, and Black and brown people also come in different shapes and sizes. That you can't just assume a very generic, cis-het white patriarchy with a black face on top of it or a brown face on top of it, that there's other things going on in our intersections that we need to be inclusive of. So that's something that we get into on this episode. Before we jump over to the recording, though, I do just want to share that I will be attending and presenting at the Black and Brown Nerd Expo in Oceanside, California on Saturday, November 5th. Myself and my podcast partner, Sharmane, aka Blurred Vision, will be there doing a panel on podcasting for our show Blurred Comics, my other podcast about blackness and blurred shit from a couple of mixed Black blurreds. We're going to be out there. We're also going to have an exhibition table just so that people can get a chance to chat and learn about our show. But if you are in the San Diego, Carlsbad, Oceanside, Escondido kind of area, come on down to Mira Costa College on Saturday, November 5th. The expo goes from 11 a.m. till I think 6 p.m. And I don't know yet what time my panel is. I haven't seen the schedule for it. I just know that we have a panel called Podcasting is for the Blurs. So if you listen and you're in the area, come on down and say hi, meet me. I'd love to meet more of the cousins out in the world. In fact, 2 years ago, right before the pandemic started, we attended the first Black Nerd Expo. It is now called the Black and Brown Nerd Expo. But we attended the very first one, and a listener of Militantly Mixed ended up coming down there to meet. They eventually became a guest on Militantly Mixed years later. Shout out to Nikki. And so, I always like to tell you if I know where I'm going to be in case one of y'all want to come out and meet me, because I want that chance. I want to get a chance to meet the cousins out there. And let's see where we're at. We're at the November 1st. So that means we have 13 more days of the Be Your Mixed Ass Self 2022 t-shirt available for sale. So if you would like to get it, make sure that you do get that before November 14th. I wore mine out when I was traveling up to Austin the other day, and I felt really good walking around in my Be Your Mixed Ass Self t-shirt. I haven't seen anybody in their pictures yet, though, although I know some of the shipments have gone out. So hopefully y'all have gotten your shirts and you'll start posting pictures of it. Just don't forget to tag Militantly Mixed in there and hashtag it Be Your Mixed Ass Self, because I want a chance to see them shirts. 2 more things. We also have the fundraiser on GoFundMe right now to help fund this show. That it's easiest if you just go to GoFundMe.com and then search for Militantly. As you're typing in Militantly, it's just going to pop up. It's the only one that is there, but Militantly Mixed on GoFundMe. That is where we are raising funds to pay off 2022's expenses and part of 2021's and the future expenses for 2023. And then in addition to that, Patreon has had a lot more movement lately, so I want to do another shout out. I'm so grateful. One of our already existing Patreon sponsors ended up increasing their Patreon sponsorship to the $100 level. So shout out to Gretchen. Thank you so much for helping. We've actually finally, for the first time, crossed over to $400. So we are at $411 a month now, which is getting us really close to that $500 a month minimum goal that I have set years ago that I'm hoping to achieve. So thank you to Gretchen for getting us there. It's going to help tremendously with the next phase of production costs. It's really, really I'm very grateful for the support. So shout out to everybody who has recently joined Patreon, whose names I've been dropping the last couple of weeks. It's just been nice to see that people do care about the show and want to help me keep this going active, just because it has been tough to keep it financially for the last couple of years. But that's it. Next week. But that's all I got for now. So I'm going to move us over to our conversation with myself and Rohan Zhou-Lee. I do have some interviews scheduled over the next few weeks, so I will hopefully get my bank up so that I'm not always missing or scrambling to get an episode out for you. But I know that things are a lot more organized by January. So as far as I know, I'm not traveling much more after November, and we'll be able to really get some proper episodes banked so that I don't miss out on weeks here and there. I'm trying, yeah. I want to say I promise, but if I get invited to 12 more events, who knows? We'll see. All right. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming back our cousin and my loved one, Rohan Zhou-Lee. And today I'm being joined by a long-time return cousin and super adorable loved one, Rohan Zhou-Lee, back on the program.
Yes, returned from Europe and all the
Return
things.
from Europe. Oh, excuse me. That's right. We should talk about that a little bit.
Our travels, our many travels.
We've been traveling, so we've like traveling while I mix. But you've been travel. Like I've been like domestically traveling, thinking I'm cute. You're like, excuse me, I've just been invited to Switzerland. No big deal. So let's talk about. Well, before that, why don't you reintroduce yourself to folks that may not be familiar with you yet, and then we'll get into our chatty chat.
Yes, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Rohan Zhou-Lee. I pronounce the name Shatanta. Let's see what else. I'm coming to you from the. Sorry, this virtual screen is still eating me. I'm coming to you.
Eating you up.
I'm coming to you from the unceded territories of the Lenape people. #land back. I am a writer, I'm a dancer, trumpeter, and I'm also a community organizer. Past couple of years, I've been working specifically in the lens of Black Asian solidarity through something called the Blasian March. Past 2 years, we've just expanded, started in New York. Sharmane was one of the lead organizers for the LA action. We've had actions in Los Angeles, New Haven, Chicago, and more to come.
More to come. And you just hit your 2nd anniversary from the original Blasian March that you did not know was going to turn into
this thing.
A whole movement.
Oh my gosh. I'm still getting used to people calling it a movement. I'm just like, no, it's just like a one little thing. But everyone's like, no, it's actually like a movement now. I'm like,
yeah, I think it's become bigger than you. Like sometimes that kind of happens, right? Like I thought Militantly Mixed was just going to be me talking to mixed people, collecting mixed folks like Pokemon. I thought like me and like just the people who were on the show would listen to it, like just specifically listen to their episodes. And 4 years later, there's an actual audience and a community. So it's just bigger than me now. So I think that's what happened.
Awards.
Got awards. And I think that's what happened with Blasian March. Like you thought you were processing what was happening in that particular time and stuff like that. And you were just creating an event for, communal grief and communal outrage and communal effort. And then next thing you know, 2 years go by and other people are asking you if they can start it in the cities that they live in. So I think that's amazing. I think that counts as a movement.
Oh, okay. I will. Okay.
Sir Auntie Maine says, get used to it.
Sir Auntie, yes, sir.
I mean, because a lot of this, like, even in terms of like my interaction with, I've always described myself as more of like an elevator rather than an organizer or an activist, but to participate in even the small levels in which I've participated with you, I feel like what you created got me like a little bit more focused on what it was I was thinking I was doing, because up until then, I think it was way too broad for me to even decide like what level do I enter an activism space. And seeing what you were doing with the Blasian March and our relationship as it's developed over the last couple of years, I think it's kind of focused it in on a lane that fits for me. So, I mean, I credit you with that. I don't know if you feel that way, but I credit you with being able to like condense it into Black Asian solidarity. I wasn't really specifically thinking that was the best place for me until you presented it. And it was like, oh, that's a thing. Yeah, that's my spot. Thanks. So that's how I feel.
That makes my heart sing. Thank you for that information.
So I know you've been like probably oversaturated in work related to all of this lately. So we did talk about maybe just nerding out a little bit. But before we nerd out a little bit, Switzerland.
Yes. Oh my gosh. How do I describe Switzerland? Well, for folks who don't know, I wound up being flown out over there.
You got hashtag team flued out.
Flued out.
Flued out.
We was flued out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was flown out. Very first, like literally the day I landed, I was presenting at the Unite Festival out in Zurich, and was able to deliver some poetry. One of the pieces was actually commissioned as a way to honor a Black man, a South African immigrant man named Nzoi, who was killed by police in 2021, if I remember correctly. So a lot of that festival was actually a fundraiser for the family, for legal funds, for the lawsuits. And then I wound up doing more things that was not on the agenda. I wound up so the funny thing about this festival, it's supposed to be like an anti-racist festival, but like all the people of color were kind of relegated to like one room called the BIPOC room. And
Yikes.
right. And it was very like off to the side, out of the way of the rest of the festival. Like you had like a main stage area, you had like a second stage area, and then there was the BIPOC room, which was like pushed off to the side, and there was like no signage to find it. It was fascinating. So I did the poetry there, and then randomly wound up on the main stage on Sharmane's stage.
Sharmane stage.
Wound up there, sang the National Black Anthem, wound up accidentally on a panel with a Black Swiss member of parliament about appropriation. Then did a ballet piece that I choreographed that was specifically to pay tribute to Asian Americans killed by police. That was actually kind of a really beautiful moment because a lot of people who were there were kind of like, we had no idea that Asians were also experiencing police brutality. We didn't realize it was also like an issue that Asians in the Asian diaspora go through. So I think I witnessed the genesis of a cross-racial coalition. It was just the most beautiful thing.
Amazing, yeah.
The people who were there were like, yeah, like we want to have like more like BIPOC events. And I was like, this is great. I'm just a part of it. This is so beautiful.
How did they find you for the invite to the original event before all the other stuff started to happen?
Yeah, I was actually delivering poetry at a fundraiser for the Philippine Human Rights Act campaign.
Okay.
Basically, this is a campaign. This is a bill circulating through Congress that, if ratified, it will cut all military and police aid to the Philippines until there is a proper investigation into human rights violations. This bill started circulating under the previous Filipino president Duterte's presidency, during which time he basically had instituted like a drug war where folks could arrest or kill folks without due process or evidence.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, right. And this led to, like, according to that International Criminal Court, about 30,000 people dead.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's really, really horrible and terrifying to think that, you know, once again, U.S. empire has been funding this human catastrophe, this really extreme violation of human rights. So a lot of folks in the Filipino diaspora here in the States, we've been collectively organizing to support this bill, get it ratified. So yeah, I was doing a fundraiser there, and some organizers for the festival approached me and were like, do you do your work like internationally? I was like, yeah, I do.
100% I do. I also ride horses. I fight with swords. What else?
What else do you want?
I want to beef up that CV. What do you need? That's amazing.
But yeah, I wound up speaking at 2 festivals. And I was supposed to do a third one through the university, but there was some contract complications. So I'm like, okay, great, moving on. But the second festival I spoke at was actually, I got to present on the Blasian March and speak about my theories around how to build coalitions across communities. It was just really beautiful. Just showing videos of the Blasian March. Some people might have been crying in the crowd. It was just like, oh.
And possibly looking to a future in which Blasian March becomes an international event, maybe?
I cannot speak officially yet.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
I can confirm nor deny. All I will just say is look out for 2024.
If that happens, let me start putting pennies in my trip jar, because I would definitely want to be a part of that.
I will tell you privately. But...
Okay, amazing. So yes, you and I found you because the original Blasian March was about to happen. We were on a shared Black Asian group on the Facebooks, and I met you through there. You came onto the show at a start of a period of time in which it was the first time I had ever kind of like segmented away from the specific, me talking to one other mixed person for the show thing, and take some time to actually voice feelings that I was having related to all the stuff that was going on. 2020 was a crazy year for more than just the pandemic. I mean, we were starting to see uptick in organizing and uprisings and things like that, community efforts to show like the pandemic was just one of the things that we were all seeing, racial inequities and things like that. And so you were kind of the part of this like segment of time in which episodes of Militantly Mixed was like that. Since then, we become friends. We actually built, alongside Asian Soph and Naturally Mona Lisa, a Black Asian Solidarity Workshop, which we need to tighten up and get that thing back on the road.
Yeah, we do.
And we've seen each other a couple times in person too, because of the Blasian March in Los Angeles, stuff like that. But we also have to have fun sometimes. We do a lot of heart work. We do a lot of very emotional and mentally exhausting work, community work. And so sometimes we need to kind of give ourselves a little bit of break. That being said, even when we try to give ourselves a little bit of a break, the race stuff, the social economic stuff still pops through and everything like that. But recently I was able to go to New York Comic-Con on somebody else paying for my trip, hashtag team flued out, and I got a chance to meet up with you while we were there. So it's the second time we've got to see each other in person, coast to coast, New York and LA. You met up with me at the con, and we got to hang out for a day. Do you want to nerd out and talk a little bit about our New York Comic-Con experience together?
Yes. Where do we start?
Mixed people being nerds at the Comic-Con. Was this your first? Was this your first New York Comic-Con?
Yeah, because usually I've only gone to FlameCon, which is like Comic-Con, but the LGBT specific one. And this time around, fun fact, this was a last minute decision. I think I purchased the ticket the night before.
We were texting until like last minute of just like, let's see what we can do.
Yeah. But yeah, wow, what an adventure. I'm still nerding out over the Mandalorian. There was like a full-on
I have a story about that.
Oh, you do? Tell me.
So you remember the guy we saw that actually had a bike? Like he rode past us on a Mandalorian bike.
That's
and everything.
What I'm thinking about. I was like, oh my God, Daddy. But
yeah, I mean, there was plenty of Mandalorians, and Mandalorians did seem to stop you in your tracks wherever we were. But that particular one was premium elite level cosplay. Plus, they had built a bike. The next day, Sunday, I was at a mini fest called Podfest, and one of the guys there who started a podcast network called Rage Network, I think it is, where they try to help, independent podcasters grow their platform. He and I were chit-chatting at this networking thing, and he's like, oh, you went to Comic-Con? Yeah, a friend of mine, he did a Mandalorian there. He built this bike and everything like that. And I was like, hey, I saw that guy. So I pulled up my video of what I was able to catch her, and I was like, is this the guy? And he's like, yeah, that's the guy. So he shows me a video of that guy coming to his house because his daughter likes the Mandalorian. So he rode up on the bike and showed up at the house and asked her to like do a quick mission with her or something like that. So she got to be like this little 4-year-old girl got to be with the Mandalorian with the guy who built that bike that we got to see, which was very cute. So not a story, like not a real story, but a weird way in which New York connected things that were unrelated, which is something that New York does a lot. Like I was at a totally different event, but it talked back to what I did at New York Comic Con, and there was a personal story involved too. It was just that whoop, whoop, whoop. It was very cute.
Also, my ovaries. Oh my god.
Yeah, you did enjoy the Mandalorians whenever we saw them, but that one was pretty.
I mean, full disclosure, The Mandalorian is my queer reawakening.
Reawakening. Did you fall asleep?
I don't. I just grew tired of men. I was like, I'm done. And then I saw Mandalorian. I was like, I am done.
You're like, oh crap.
Okay.
It's funny you say that. I'm going through a period, a boy period, which is very strange for me because it doesn't happen very often. And even though I do describe myself as bisexual, and I am partnered with a long-term primary male partner, I don't think about boys that often. I don't find them attractive that often anymore, but I am in a period of like the last 6 months. It's pretty much just men that I've been attracted to, and I'm really stressed out about that.
See, that was you also at Comic-Con as well. So
we
both were having our queer mixed nerd experience.
Because like a nerdy anybody works, like as long as they fit the rest of the attractive qualities that you're into. But finding out that they're also nerds is like, it's a whole new thing. It's a whole new level of attraction nowadays.
Oh man,
it's killing me.
Okay, so we met up at the very beginning.
It was the busiest day of Comic-Con because I did all 4 days. It was busiest day then.
Wow.
Very overwhelming how many people were. I can't even believe we actually found each other
so
while looking for each other. You know, like that we were like, I'm standing by this sign. Can you see this sign? Because there were so many people there. I just thought it was going to be damn near impossible. But we managed it. We found each other.
Yeah, like I don't figure stay by the entrance, do not wander.
I think I literally took a picture of me under a poster and I was like, I'm under this poster. Can you see me?
And I was like, oh, I see the poster. Okay, great.
So you saw a couple of salt and pepper haired Star Trek folks and Star Wars folks that also turned your head a little bit.
I mean, yes.
So FlameCon, I understand it's more of the LGBTQ plus focused one and probably a lot smaller. Have you been to a nerd event as large as New York Comic Con before?
Absolutely not. And that was a lot. Like so like the same org that ran the Queer Lounge also runs FlameCon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I do believe that too.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh, this is FlameCon, but like times 35.
Yeah. It's even for me, I've go to them and even this one was pretty big to me. Like it feels bigger than San Diego.
But we met Dominique Alexander. That was really fun.
We did. So there was on the lowest level, there was a Pride Lounge, which was really weird to walk into because when you're going through all the chaos of New York Comic Con and you come out into this room, it looked like it was a split room that held 3 functions: a bar, a step and repeat, and a panel room.
A step and repeat.
It did. It had like a little. It had like a little step and repeat, but like you couldn't get to it easy. So like we didn't even walk over to that side of the room. It wasn't a very large room, but
no, it wasn't.
But it seemed like every time we went in there, like maybe a panel was happening because people were seated. Plus Dominique was standing, like taking pictures the second time we walked in. And then there was people taking pictures on the other side. She's so freaking tall.
She is. I was like, God damn.
I went up to her belly button. Like, I was just so tiny next to, I mean, she was hella tiny because she's very skinny, but I went up to her belly button. I knew she was tall, but I had no idea that I was going to be dwarfed like that.
She needs to be the next. She is Storm. I'm sorry. Like, she's Storm.
She would make a beautiful Storm. I would really love that too. With the
totally
white eyes and the white hair. It would be, she got the bone structure. It would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What all did we do while we were there?
Let's see. We went around the artist alley or whatever they called it. Yeah.
Artist alley.
That was really fun because I'd see like some, independent artists, some like local artists do their stuff. That was really cool. What else we did? We tried to get into a few panels in the afternoon. We tried.
We were cute. We thought we could just walk upstairs and go into the Star Trek panel like ain't no thing.
Right. And then they're like, no.
We got stuck in this huge crush. And it's funny because I should have known better, but I think I had a false sense of security because I managed to get into some of the Marvel panels without reserving in advance, because the reservation, they do allow you to reserve in advance before the thing comes. And it's still first come, first serve, but you have just a better shot. And all of those were closed by the time I tried to reserve. So the fact that I got into some of them, I was just like, oh, this is going to be fine. And we go up this escalator and are in the tightest crush of people, of humanity.
Literally.
That we had to hold on to each other just so we wouldn't get separated. Sometimes I felt like it sucks being short in those moments because you're just looking at somebody's lower back or their ass, because I am short and they might be all different kinds of heights. And you're just stuck. Like I was like as close to freaking out as I could possibly get. And because I'm people claustrophobic, not space claustrophobic. But there was just too many damn people in there near me in that moment. But we managed to get through it. We just couldn't get into that panel. We lined up though, right?
Yeah.
For a minute.
Yeah. For like a hot second. And then we were like, no, it's not worth even trying. Because I was like, yeah, I don't want to. I mean, first off, I spent how much money on that ticket? I was like, I am not spending $150 million or whatever the cost was to stand in line for an hour to not go into a panel. I'm not wasting my time.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like,
no. But we still ended up in a really good panel that suited both of us.
That was really fun.
Which was a young adult graphic novels.
Yeah.
Their panelists range from everybody was an active graphic novelist and or artist, but them as people range from like educators in the New York education system, or librarians, or comic book artists, or prose writers and stuff like that too. But they had all collectively ended up doing graphic novels in some way, shape, or form. I didn't realize some of this, like some of the stuff they mentioned or taught us during that panel, I didn't realize was happening in the graphic novel space. So I thought that was a really lucky find when we got turned away from Star Trek.
Yeah. And it's so funny because even like, I mean, you get the highlights and the like trailers released like afterwards online. So I'm kind of like, okay, like it is what it is.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
It's so fun to be able to get a chance to get into those bigger panels though. But for as far as the smaller panels went, I felt like you really got a chance to see a little bit of different than like the quote unquote mainstream white cis male stuff. So that was a good one.
Absolutely.
And we saw some great cosplayers and things like that. You and I were also dressed up. You were dressed up as
Miles Morales.
And I'm assuming you know this, but from behind, you destroy that costume. Like it was like, oh my god! Like you got up in line and you stood up in front of me, and I was like, I've never looked at Rohan like that before. You got cakes in that cosplay. I'm sure you turned a lot of heads in that cosplay. I was matched up Joker Loki.
Yes, Jokey.
Dominique did like my look. She did say she liked my look.
I love the combination.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, house mother loves that.
I know, my whole face. Like, I didn't think I was gonna be a fake. Like, okay, as a person who does like to cosplay, when somebody freaks out about what you're doing, it feels good. The first time I dressed up as Jubilee at WonderCon, I think it was, and people were just calling me Jubilee and asking me to take pictures with them, like other X-Men cosplayers and stuff. That felt great. And up until now, I would have said the best thing ever is when you're dressed as a cosplay and someone else is in the similar, and they're like, Jubilee, can I take a picture with you? I thought that was the best thing ever until Dominique was like, I love your look. I love the combination. You couldn't tell me shit for the rest of the
day. House mother approved. I was like, great.
Like, I almost wanted to be like, if anybody did compliment me, be like, you know who else complimented me today?
No, I feel that. Like, when you're in full on cosplay and people like call you by that character, you're almost like in superhero mode.
You do. You feel.
Yeah.
It's one of the few times when, like, I don't need for someone to know who I am. Like, in fact, I'd rather you didn't. Like, you know, like, I just be like, Jubilee, yes, you know, like all that kind of stuff. I love it. I did tell you this, but the day before that, I dressed as Shinobu Kochu from the Demon Slayer anime, and these two white guys had walked past me, and one looked down at me and was like, oh, she looks like a Shinobu. At least she kind of looks Japanese. And in my head, my first thought was like, you're not wrong. I do kind of look Japanese. I do kind of look Japanese. I was probably the only Asian Shinobu, actually, at all of New York Comic Con. I never saw other Asians dressed up as Shinobu, so that's possible. But what I loved about you, like, let's since we're mixed folks and being nerds at the same time, you're a mixed person dressed as a mixed character.
As a mixed character. And you know, it's something so Miles Morales, especially in the film Into the Spider-Verse, that was my real intro into comic books. I know that's not a very long time ago, but
it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
You entered when you entered.
I entered the universe. It was glorious. And like, it's something that I also explained to one of my white friends. It was kind of like, you know, I mean, as folks who don't know, I clearly was raised as a boy. I am no longer identify as a boy, obviously. Not as obvious to your listeners, but to me it's obvious. But but you know, like when you're a black
you
boy,
did reference your ovaries earlier.
True.
Today,
Is this a case of gender confusion or gender dysmorphia? I don't know.
You know what? We can actually have that conversation too, because with my bigender thing, I'm like, I can't tell what it is. What I want to say and what's politically correct about what I need to convey are different things.
And at this point, 0 fucks given.
Exactly.
But yeah, like, you know, Black boys, Latino boys, they are not given the best representation in media. Like, or if you see Black or Latino men on TV in Hollywood, you know, in a lot of these like crime TV shows, they're criminals, they're behind bars, they're dead. Like the kids, you know, anytime you see a Black boy in the news, it's because something really horrible happened to them. Like, and like, you know, for me, it's thinking about what that teaches our Black children and our Latino children about their value in society and their worth in society. And of course, that's probably very devastating to their mental health, or most kids' mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
So enter Miles Morales, and like, sure, I can discuss the propaganda of one parent being a cop, whatever, that's fine.
And it's definitely a complicated aspect of his story for sure.
Absolutely. Especially when we talk about policing Black boys and Black bodies in general. But for Black and Latino boys to see, or Afro-Latino boys to see, you know, a Black Latino being the superhero, being the hero, being the main character story, having a romantic arc line, like, how beautiful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And Into the Spider-Verse itself, hands down, and for me as a almost lifelong comic book reader, 2 times have I been like moved heavily while watching a comic book related movie. And one of those is Black Panther, when the scene from Warrior Falls pops up and you see all the different tribes represented in their different colors and their, their singing and things like that. Like that was one of the first times that watching a comic book movie, I was like heavily, heavily affected emotionally. And another time was watching Miles walk down the street to school from his apartment and change between English, AAVE, and Spanish or Spanglish throughout this entire walk down, say, 2 blocks of street. And nothing, I've never felt more, even though I myself am not of Latin heritage, I never felt more represented, media wise than I have in that moment. Cause I know exactly what it's like to, in an entire day's interaction, switch between being mixed Black main, mixed Asian main, mixed Japanese main, Black Japanese main, or the corporate, change your accent to work at work type of main. Like that scene is, I don't think I can ever explain it to a white person in a way that would make them understand how critical that specific scene was to me as a mixed person. And it didn't matter that it was Spanish he was speaking and not Japanese he was speaking. It was like everything he just did there, that's my whole day.
Literally.
I love that moment. Like, I mean, the movie itself is hands down one of the best comic book movie translations into movies that I've seen, and I it's definitely in my top 5. But I'll tell you, that fucking scene, like the way I teared up after, because I was like, that's me. It's not, but it is. Like it's just it was enough. It was enough.
The way you resonate, it just means so much. Yeah, I think I cried around the end when the Jewish Spider-Man was like, "You're doing great, kid." And I was like, "Oh, Jewish Spider-Man, you're so cute."
Yeah, everything. Like, I mean, I think across the board they did really great with all the characters and but in terms of the representation, I think because with Miles, he's not it's kind of like the Blasian March, right? It's Black and Asian and Blasian solidarity. You specifically list that in the explanation of what the Blasian March is. With Miles, he's not just Afro-Latino. He is half Black. He has a Black parent. He has a Latina parent. And he maneuvers a space that has Afro-Latin culture. Right. Where he's at. So he is at all times Black, at all times Latino, at all times Afro-Latino.
Absolutely.
All happening at one time. To me, he's a very important character for those of us who come from diasporic mixes in the United States. Like it's very specific what he does. And for him to be getting the attention that he's getting to the degree, like when Miles was we just recently celebrated his 10th anniversary in comics last year. When Miles first dropped, you would occasionally see at a Comic-Con one Black person dressed as Miles.
Right.
Just one. Now you see a bunch of people, but now you also see white kids dressed as Miles. You see Latino kids dressed as Miles. You see Black kids dressed as Miles. You see Afro-Latino kids dressed you see femmes dressed as Miles. Like it's speaking. It's got in there enough that it's speaking to people that they're finding the importance of this character. And it's for such a small time of existence, it's nice to see the impact that character has. But for those of us that are mixed and are literally sitting between multiple cultures, he's our guy.
Yeah, I actually wore that suit to a BLM protest in 2020. I was like, yeah.
Why not? Like, yeah.
Why fucking not? Like
a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man to look after us at an action.
Thank you, safety. Oh man. So what else happened at Comic-Con? Oh my gosh. So we went across the merchandise?
The exhibitor hall, which was
oh my gosh,
one of the biggest exhibitor halls I've ever seen, including just not the width of it, but the height of it. Like
the height,
the installations of the was so big in some cases.
Oh my gosh, I felt like it was like a museum because I was like so many fandoms from like my childhood where I was like,
it was all thrown up, it's just one big,
literally. I was like, oh, Dragon Ball Z and Yu-Gi-Oh! And oh my gosh, I was like, wow.
It's so funny too, because knowing you the way what I know of you, you're a big book nerd. You're constantly
Oh yeah.
posting like a bookstore you've gone to and accidentally you bought 5 books and somehow you read them. Like you had time to read them
Yeah,
somehow.
right.
Is crazy.
Somehow.
You went to New York Comic Con dressed as Miles Morales. You're walking down with the, what's this? What's this? What's this? And still end up putting all your money into books.
I know.
You nerd.
Literally, I was like, the book nerd in me came out
It
with
did
like,
big time. You were
like,
stressed. You stressed yourself out.
I know, because like I was like, this is when I lose control. It's like I will lose control when it comes down to book shopping. Like that is the one thing that I'm like, I don't care. This is a waste of money. Just like put it in my
It's not
cart.
a waste though. It's not a waste.
True. So so for folks who do attend Comic-Con and are book nerds, some of the vendors, actually most of the vendors will have like a discount on the books.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we were there, it was like 20% off.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, later on, I was back in the Pride Lounge and showing people my books, and someone told me that it's even cheaper on Sunday.
It can be if people travel. Like usually the local vendors won't do as big a deep cuts, but the traveling vendors will because they don't want to carry as much back.
Right.
So
I was like, oh, next year I'm going on a Sunday. Even though if I buy the ticket and the books, it still kind of evens out price-wise, but whatever, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's the same with me. Like for me, I think we deserve our extravagances. We do a lot of work in these areas, but even not just for that. Like as a kid who grew up on welfare and had to like leave possessions behind a lot to when our rent would not work out or whatever, we'd have to bolt in the night and stuff. I grew up like losing stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get to have my childhood things for very long. It was a constant, like, if I was lucky enough to get a toy, eventually I would lose that toy because my mom couldn't pay rent and I would have to bolt in the night. And so as an adult, I grant myself those toy related extravagances because like, one, I have adult money now. So I'm learning I can spend my money myself instead of asking permission how to spell it. But since you are into Mandalorian and I have a toy extravagance problem.
Oh no, my ovaries are already imploding. Ah!
This is my Bandai Samurai.
Oh my gosh.
Let me turn off my blur so that you can see. See the whole thing.
Does that come in human size?
Grogu has a top knot.
Oh!
Like, are you fucking kidding me? I could say that I spent the money on the top knot alone. But look at the armor.
Oh,
he's in
that is
typical Ronin level armor. So these are collectibles that I have. I have the Star Wars. I have a lot of the Star Wars ones, and I have some of the Marvel ones. But I wasn't planning on getting it, and then I saw how short the line was at Bandai at the moment that I was there on that day.
All I'm gonna say is, if that thing comes to life in man form, I'm taking it. That thing will bolt with me in the night.
Yeah, I'll if I like rub a genie or something like that and my toys come to life, I'll loan him out to you.
Just for the weekend, please. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah, so for me, like the way you were about books especially towards the end, like when we were just like, because you stopped at one spot that you ended up got a free book, like complete free preview of a book or whatever, which I thought was insane. I've not seen anything like that at a Comic-Con before, so that was pretty cool to see. But the way your energy was my energy as I was sitting there walking past the Bandai, like don't look, don't see what they have. Like you're on a budget. I ended up just eating sandwiches for the rest of my trip so that so I could blow my budget. I actually came up like $20 under budget. So still fine.
You made it.
But it was because I got that and switched to sandwiches instead of buying food. Like I would wait all day and buy sandwiches after I got off the subway versus buying food at the thing.
Yeah.
Because even that hot dog we got was $12.
I know. I was like, no, sir. Oh man. So like it was so funny. So even after you left, I went back to the books.
You did?
I did.
Did you get more books?
I almost did. Because I was like, okay, I've already gone through like that publishing house until other publishing houses. One person actually kind of annoyed me a little bit at one vendor. She saw my outfit and she's like, oh, by the way, we're selling other like Spider-Man books down on the other end of our, booth. And I was like, cool, thank you. They were all picture books. And I was like,
ew.
Right? I was like, ma'am.
I'm grown.
White lady.
Give me 1,000 pages of words. No.
Well, I was like, do you see me with a child?
You know
No.
what I'm saying?
That's stupid.
Plus, you came to the Comic-Con. Like, you put your booth at the Comic-Con.
And I'm looking through the adult books, lady. Stupid fuck. Anywho, like, let me not be bitter. She was annoying. So after you left, after that, so I went to dinner with a friend. I actually went back to Comic-Con for one more panel.
Yeah, you texted me that night and you were like, it's a ghost town here, but there's still stuff happening.
Yeah, there was like a karaoke thing, which I did not participate in because I wanted to go to the panel first because I was very curious. And then when the panel was done, I went over to the karaoke place and they were like, we got 10 minutes left. There's no way you're signing up. I was like, great. Like,
no,
whatever. It's fine. Yeah, the panel was actually, can I be honest about this?
Yeah.
Okay, great. This is a honest reflection. So the panel was on Afrofuturism, and
I wanted to go to that, but I had tickets for something else, so I didn't go.
Which was something amazing and musical theatery and Angelica Ross related. So yes. I was like, go. How was Chicago, by the way?
It was great. It was a lot of fun. And getting to see, and I had such a good mezzanine ticket so I could see the whole stage. So it was like it was a really nice thing. But Angelica was great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So this panel on Afrofuturism, first off, there was only one woman on the panel, and these were all cis-het people.
Okay.
So at first I was like, okay, like, let's take our time. Let's figure this out. But then by the end of the panel, like, not once had they discussed, LGBT folks or disabled people or Black immigrants or Black elders. So I was just... Maybe because I had a lot of vodka in me. Because dinner
Pride Lounge did have an open bar.
Yes, the open bar was also free, which we did not know until after you left. I went down there again. So yeah, I got free wine at the lounge. Went to dinner. My friend bought all my drinks. So I'm somewhere in blunt honesty and zero funks given zone. So I get up on the mic. Because for folks who have never been to a Comic-Con, they usually have like a microphone like in the audience. Folks walk up to it, ask questions. And so, what particularly incensed me was how they would bring up like Octavia Butler or I forget who else they brought up, but they did not mention her queerness.
Yeah, they like to leave that out about her quite often.
Quite often. And I do not like this censorship of the Black community, because then it's like, who are you censoring Blackness for?
Yeah, because they decide we get to be one thing. You
Right.
either move as queer or you move as Black or brown, because I do
Right.
think it carries into other brown folks too. And we're literally just here at all times being both those things.
Right.
That's disappointing.
That's so disappointing.
Well, it's the same thing that happens with Black Lives Matter, right? Like you have to scream at people to remind them that the original creators were Black queer femmes. Like,
right.
hello.
Like, that always makes me so mad when like I go to a BLM event and people are like mean to Black women. I'm like, Black women made this event.
They made
possible.
this.
Right.
Like, I don't understand. Are you all broken? Are you all broken? Because like literally
the answer is yes.
You also come out of it, well, in some cases, like a Black woman. So like,
right.
I don't understand.
Here, like I'm reminded of one of the Latina like political slogans, like "Sin las mujeres no hay revolución." Without women, there is no revolution. So I'm just like, literally, without Black women, you would not have BLM. So like, please stop.
Right.
Oh, right. So they also brought up like Black Panther, because they were talking about Afrofuturism like in the mainstream. And they're like, yeah, like, isn't it great? And, you know, this is also before the interview with Michaela Cole came out, talking about how her character in the new film is queer. And I, on the mic, was like, you know, as a queer person, I have to point out, you know, we brought up Black Panther as comic book writers. We're praising Black Panther in the film, but no one wants to talk about how Okoye is gay in the comics.
Yeah.
Or again, like you all brought up Octavia Butler, but I actually said the word censored. I was like, you all censored out that she's gay. So
what reactions? I'm very curious about what reactions.
They were all kind of like stone cold, like, brr. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem.
That's the problem.
When it's addressed, it's still like, let's just stand still and maybe like T-Rex, they won't notice me if I don't move.
No one move a muscle. The gang see you, honey.
You're right here.
So I asked them, how in your craft are you creating an Afrofuturism where all Black people are welcome?
Right.
And literally the crowd started clapping.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yes. So the crowd was on board, but the panelists
was totally on board. Yeah.
Might not have been.
And oh my God, the responses were so funny. So like one guy, which like, he brought up how, you know, he's working on a Samuel Delaney project. I was like, okay, like I'll let that go since, you know, he also, there's evidence to say that he was also queer. So basically,
there's evidence. There's symptoms of queerness are available.
So basically, all the major original writers of Afrofuturism were gay. Wow, shocker!
Why do you think we needed to create a fantasy world to
be
able to tell our stories? Maybe because there's no room in reality for us. God damn! Like seriously, like when you really break it down, how ridiculous it is that like Black queer people pretty much created a genre, and then as that genre goes into the mainstream, the Blackness disappears, the queerness disappears, and it just becomes like this like melting pot, which I think is a dirty word. You know, melting pot of stuff that has nothing to do with what we did to try to make room for us.
Right. Like it's not necessarily, for me, it's not a melting pot. It is a culture of extraction.
There you go.
We have a culture of extracting things from those who are more marginalized than us. Like our culture is based on white culture, and white culture is theft culture. So like we have a culture of stealing. Like, yeah.
Literally. So it's kind of why in my intro, even though there's times when I feel a little obnoxious doing it, why I do the busiest mixed race, comma, bi-gendered, comma, black and polyamorous, comma. Like the reason why I put all that forward every time is because like I know creators get erased for what they identify as.
Absolutely.
And I'm not going to make room for my identity to be disappeared. You know,
right.
It's part of the craft that I have.
Yeah.
I put it into the craft that I have. And so if you're not going to say Octavia Butler, comma, queer Black woman, comma, author, comma, you know, like if you're not going to do that, then what are we doing?
What are we doing? We are participating in our own erasure from history.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do the same thing with the Blasian March. Like, I have to say I am an Asian American. If I don't say that, I will be erased from the story. I will be erased from my own work. And that has actually happened to me in real life, like in real time.
Yeah.
Literally, while I was like organizing one rally, and that literally happened. And I was like, I hate this. But yeah, so that one guy brought up Samuel Delaney. He's like, "Are trying to work on that project." I was like, you know what? I would love an update when you have time. I'm gonna hit you up, girl. And then, oh my gosh, this other guy on the panel, he was like, "Oh, you know, we're not there yet in the mainstream. So sorry."
So what?
Exactly.
Literally, you're making this shit up. Like, you're literally making this shit up. You can just do it.
Just fucking do it.
Just do it.
And you, as a straight man, if you're going to be Afrofuturist, it is your duty to use your straight privilege to make room for other people.
Right.
Especially when you are standing on the backs of queer Black writers who created the genre you are now thriving off of. So you owe it to queer Black people, at least to queer Black people.
At least, bare minimum.
Like, we haven't even
case. Like, and let's not forget that until white people got on boats, almost all of our brown cultures had room for multiple genders, had room for queerness in different, even in positions of I don't want to choose the wrong word, but idolization or elite, you know, like higher echelon people within some of our cultures were the queer folks. Like, and then white people got on boats, and when that happened, it took it away. You know what I'm saying? So like, if we're gonna try to recapture the greatness that we believe we were before white people got on boats, capture the greatness that we were before white people got on boats. Capture all of it. Don't act like we're gonna elevate this part just and forget the rest, and therefore still be participating in white supremacy. Like, let's stop doing that.
That's definitely. I'll get to that later, but yeah. As a side note, that is very much how I felt about the Woman King film. So many parts I love about it, but I was not a spoiler. The invisibilizing of queerness in Dahomey culture that Audre Lorde writes about in her writing. You know, I just found that very just like hurtful. It's kind of like, but we were there. Like, the Dahomey literally have 7 forms of marriage. Like, obviously
we're here. Yeah. It's just like when a TV show filled with white people has one Black friend or one Asian friend or one Latino friend, and I'm like, literally, this is not reality. I've never seen a friend group that is looks like that.
Right. Like, not everyone is the Power Rangers, okay, honey? Like,
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
God damn.
Oh man. And it got even more egregious when the one woman on the panel who, like, there was also a weird moment with her where, like, one of the men made her stand up and was like, "Everyone look at her dress." And I was like,
ew,
she's not a mannequin doll, man.
I know.
Bro.
That's what she's on the stage for.
I know. I was like, she's here because she's here to speak, not to be this weird, like, okay, whatever. The straights are not okay.
They're not okay.
They're not okay.
They're not okay.
The streets are not okay. But when she tried to answer my question, she was like, you know, I'd encourage you just to make your own work and put it on YouTube and, you know, be like Issa Rae and get picked up that way. I was like,
you don't know about me. First of all,
right? I was like, she has no idea I have published work already. So I was like, okay, ma'am.
The presumption.
The presumption that I am not published.
Yeah.
So that brought on a whole elitist level and the assumption that Black queer writers are not here yet. I was like, ma'am, have you met Octavia Butler?
Yeah, have you met any of the work you literally are referencing on this panel?
Literally. Like, oh my gosh. So I was like, I need
seriously, like, also when you just think of, like, I'm just getting frustrated because you just think about Octavia Butler's work. She literally created characters that were non-binary or non-gendered at best, agender. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, and paired them in such a variety of ways in which, like, you had a masculine representation, you had a feminine representation, and then you had a non-binary representation as a unit, as a procreative unit. Like, how do we pretend that whole series doesn't exist?
Right. Even like in her most like iconic Parable of the Talents, there is an openly lesbian couple. Like,
yeah, because when you start thinking about it, you click through and you're like, oh wait, here also, and also here, and also here.
So it was just, I was pretty outraged. But one, I guess, plus side is all the queer folk kind of came up to me afterwards and were like, thank you. And I was like, nice. But why should we have to do this?
Why should we? Right.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah. There's a trans mask person there. And I felt so bad for them to have to sit there and like just stomach this like really
on the panel.
No. They were
in the audience.
But to have to like stomach this just like verbally violent invisibilization of our people. You know?
And the answer shouldn't always be if you don't see it created. There's something cute about that to a degree, of course. I didn't see mixed representation in podcasting because it literally wasn't active at the time. There was some before me and then it stopped. And for a whole year, there wasn't anything. I created the thing I was missing. Fine.
Right. Fine.
But the thing is, I was looking for it to exist.
Right.
Why was I the one that had to be responsible in that case? You know what I'm saying? Like, that means that even though I did create the thing I wanted to see or hear, I still am not represented somewhere else. I still have to go to my own thing to find representation. Right. So it's cute. It's great. It's missing. Create it. Great. Do that. But also, if you're outside of this community, don't assume that the right answer is it doesn't exist, so you do it.
Right.
It's you need cultural competency too. You need to have consultants in these areas as well. Don't just write queer characters if you're not a queer person. Reach out to queer people, partner with them and say, I have this world I've created. It would be stupid to not have queer people in this world because queer people fucking exist. Hello. I don't want to write anybody inauthentic. Could you help? Can I pay you to consult on how to insert characters in a realistic manner?
Right.
You know, like it's possible. It's just fucking possible.
Right. And these are published authors sitting here spewing this shit. And I'm like, this is why in publishing we have beta readers, we have sensitivity readers, we have like these layers of readers to go through this. Like we consult people. And like I agree with you. I definitely have like I have mixed feelings about the whole, like, you don't see it, create it. Because I'm like, again, like you said, like, it's not our responsibility all the time. And two, I'm reminded a lot. So one of our other colleagues, conspirators, Soleil Yu, who also helped collaborate for the Blasian March in LA, she uses this term called political imagination. And for me, like, it tells me that you as a writer, as a straight, cishet, monoracial person, if you can't write stories and have the sensitivity to create a character that is authentic to the human experience, you are lacking political imagination. And it's not on me as a mixed person to go through the labor of creating a story. It's on you as a fellow human being to understand the people around you. Like,
right. This is a problem that I have, which I like, I'll get on a soapbox about this all the time, is the idea of what empathy is.
Right.
I hate that empathy means I can picture it happening to me, therefore I care.
That's selfish still.
It's still selfish and it's so stupid.
Yeah.
You know, like, because here's the thing. I'm not a dog or a cat. And yet I drive down the road and I see a roadkill dog or cat and I instantly get triggered emotionally, because that is obviously an animal that died in a violent in moments and was like instantly taken out.
Right.
And I feel pain about that. I don't need to imagine getting hit by a car and killed on impact to feel something about that moment. I just feel it. I would argue that a lot of people see an animal suffering and also feel some form of empathy without being able to relate to it. But why as people, you have to imagine yourself in that same position for you to have empathy for someone from a group or a category that is not your group or category? Doesn't make sense. We're literal human beings. We are breathing, living, like, forget the human part. We're living beings.
Right.
If you can extend empathy to a cat or a dog or a bird, but you can't extend empathy to me because my skin is a little bit darker than you, or you can't extend empathy to me because I look femme, but describe a gender identity that includes masculine and feminine.
Right.
Because you can't conceive of it.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
Small-minded. Like, that is crazy.
Right. It's like your empathy remains rooted in your privilege. And that's not true empathy. That's still selfishness.
It's Instagram empathy is what I've started to think about it. Like, it's the person, it's the person that'll go to a developing, and I'm doing that in quotation fingers, country, and take pictures with the children of those areas. Oh, look at how these cute little brown kids just like love me because I helped them build a house or some shit like that. That's Instagram empathy. Because if you cared, you wouldn't have taken pictures of those children in that situation.
Which is still selfish because you're doing it for the grams.
You're doing it for the grams, right? Like, there's many a memory that I hold of an incident in which I did not take photos of it because I was living in the situation in the moment. And there's times when I was like, man, I wish I could picture that again, but I don't have a clear picture of it anymore. I'm fuzzy. But you know what I do have? Or what I don't have is a Instagram chock-a-block full of ways in which I've helped somebody that other people can now celebrate me for helping. That's not empathy. That's weird. You know, like, it's weird that you need that. So for people like authors on this panel, or any type of creative work where you don't include people from outside of your category in them, or if you do include people from outside your category in your work, they are some form of a stereotype and not in any way authentic to a particular person or group of people.
Right. And like, even for us as creatives, as artists, sometimes it's not the story we want to tell. You know? Like, sometimes that's just like, why are you putting all this pressure on us to further pigeonhole our work? Like, if we're that marginalized, if we're only going to work within our margins, you are still telling me that I have to work within a boundary that is more oppressed and more marginalized than your boundaries. So like, that doesn't serve any of us. I'm thinking there's this one author, Case and Calendar. I can't remember if they're non-binary, but they're definitely like within the realm of trans existence. And their novel, Queen of the Conquered, amazing book. It's set like in a fantasy version of the Caribbean during the trade of African slaves to the Caribbean. And the main character is not explicitly trans. They have a very cis heteronormative plotline, and it won the World Fantasy Award in 2020. So
it's possible to write outside of your category with some form of competency. Yeah, like,
dear God.
Like, oh my goodness, like, my mind is blown. Like, especially, this is the idea that I think is the most frustrating about what you've described, is that a Black queer woman accidentally created a genre, literally wasn't seeking out to it, just writing and in fact, I think I've heard an audio recording of some sort of Octavia Butler going, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't set out to do anything. I had stuff in me and I needed to get it out. And there wasn't therapists. There wasn't a place where you could work out some of this stuff. So I wrote it out. And in writing it out, accidentally creates a genre, right? So your fantasy world, like in her case, she accidentally created a fantasy world and genre based out of the stuff she had going on inside of her that she needed a way to get out. But for the rest of us who enter it, we want fantasy too. Like, why does our fantasy have to include the oppression from the day-to-day life? I don't need, a lot of people will say, I don't go to the movies to see tragedy. I go to the movies to escape from the tragedy of my life. Well, as creators, why wouldn't we have that same feeling? I don't create to constantly be regurgitating the trauma and stuff that I've experienced. Sometimes I just want to be a fucking mermaid. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes I just want to do some shit that I can't do in real life.
Right.
Sometimes I want to swim around through the deep ocean, or sometimes I want to fly through space. I want to do things that I will never be able to do in reality, and I want to find joy and art and beauty in that kind of stuff. But because I'm a marginalized person, a multi-tiered marginalized person, I have to always do work within my marginalization.
Right.
No. Fucking no, not in fantasy. No. Are you kidding me? No. That's why I stopped playing D&D, because because the same race categories and gender categories and all that kind of shit was happening when I was playing a tank character. Like, why did I play a tank character? I played tank characters because I'm essentially a powerless being in my reality. I don't have physical strength like a tank character. I don't have immunity to disease or bullets or, whatever. I don't have these things. So what do I do in my fantasy character? I create myself the most powerful possible character I can create myself as, so I can enjoy my fantasy. And then a white guy put an apron on me and told me to go to the kitchen and be lookout. I'm literally the biggest character of my little group.
Oh no.
And I was told to wear an apron and go on lookout. I have armor. No. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that in my fantasy. I want to enjoy my fantasy. So for marginalized, it's even more so frustrating for marginalized authors within a genre to further marginalize people who share an overlap. Like, just because they are not Black and queer, you are a mixed race, but in their visual of you, at least a Black mixed person, and a queer person, and they could only see you've announced your difference, so stay within your difference. Fuck you for that.
Literally. And like, it goes back to how scarcity mentality is so prevalent in publishing. How some people are like, we're always like in this weird competition to get published. I'm like, there's
8 billion people on this planet. You're gonna tell me that you don't have an audience somewhere?
Hello. Also, to correct myself and update myself and our listeners, Case and Calendar does identify as trans and uses they, them, and he, him pronouns. So yay for checking myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's disappointing. And that's how you ended your con experience?
I did wind up just sitting through the end of the karaoke, because I was like, I need to pretend that did not happen to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting here just like, oh my God, I just witnessed like the hotepness at this like major, like iconic events in all the geekdoms. I just witnessed this moment of like, what the fuck?
Yeah. That just goes to show you like like almost no space is safe. Like, you go in these segmented spaces, you're like, I need to be a nerd without being harassed for being a nerd. I'm gonna go to the nerd place. Oh wait, you don't have room for me because I'm queer too? Oh shit. Like, god damn. I can't win in these places.
You can't win. So I was like, you know what? One day I'm gonna manifest this. I'm gonna have a panel on like Afro queerness. Like, I can't. Like,
absolutely, yes. Let's make it happen. It's very possible.
It hasn't happened already. Hello.
Yeah, let's work on putting it together. I will support it in every way. So I think it's definitely a pitchable panel at any of the cons, because one thing that a lot of cons are guilty of is having a in their attempt to be diverse, they actually really highlight segmentation in even a higher way. Because if you don't put these diverse, quote unquote, diverse panels on the main stage, then are you actually being diverse? Did you give me the smallest room at the farthest distance for people to walk to from the exhibit hall? Then you're not being actually very inclusive. Do you account for the fact that like brown people also come in disabled, also come in queer, also come in different body sizes? You know, do you account for the fact that there's all this diversity within the different categories of people too, which sometimes happens a little, sometimes doesn't. But the most egregious thing that a lot of cons are guilty of when they're attempting to be diverse is booking all of color panels at the same time.
That part.
Or I would make an argument for the queer panels as well. I'm not going to make that argument for the panels that include disabled people, because I bet you they just forget that disabled people exist. Full stop.
Oh yeah.
I would say that those would all end up kind of being at the same time, so it splits your audience and you don't necessarily get a full room.
Right.
Because
the turnout wasn't that big. I was like, well, you hamstrung us in the first place.
Yeah.
So.
Which happened here in Texas is that I was supposed to be on a panel at a particular time of day that included a bunch of Black nerds. Then I was asked to pitch my own panel, which I said, here's my pitch. Do not book me at this time to this time because I'm going to be on the other panel. They booked me at that same time. So it not only split the blurred audience, the people who were to come to both of those panels knew me and knew the other panelist, the other panel.
Oh, no.
So if you liked me and you liked the other person and you wanted to support us both, you literally had to pick which one you wanted to support most.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I did a panel. Well, I was on a conference as well in August, and they did something similar. Like they did all the film presentations in one time slot. They did all the LGBT presentations in one time slot. So I was just like, well, I can't compete with like super famous drag queen down the hall who has the main hall, and I had this like tiny little room to myself. So I'm like,
and you're also sitting there with your panel going, I would have gone to that too. Like, you know, like I would have gone to the other thing, even if I wasn't involved in the other thing.
Right. Like we all like met up, took a photo beforehand. We're all like, we want to go support each other. But I was like, but we can't because we're all at the same time. Like,
yeah. So I haven't, the worst part about mine is that I told them in a week in advance and they still made that error in booking, and then they couldn't fix it according to them. But you know, like, I think we need to be more vocal about that as creators and panelists that are within these intersectional categories, so that we can actually prevent that shit from happening. Because honestly, like if I was booking panel, I understand scheduling is insane, but I would start with your most marginalized groups and place them first so they don't overlap. And then your dime a dozen mainstream quote unquote stuff could go wherever, because people are going to show up for those. But give us a crack. They're mainstream. They'll be fine. Give us a crack at it. But yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. I know it's kind of a last minute thing. I had a cancellation and I was like, I need to record. But anytime that I get a chance to spend more time with you, I always will sign up for it. So thank you for joining me for this and being a nerd with me. I also just really love that you came to meet up at Comic-Con with me too, because it's, you know, we don't live in the same city. The bulk of our entire friendship has been developed over a screen like this.
And life is short, so fuck it. I was like, look, what am I wasn't like, Comic-Con wasn't gonna happen, but all of a sudden it happened. I was like, you know what? I had an adventure and it was beautiful. And met some cute guys too.
Excellent. I'm excited about that.
I mean, we're just friends, but like I was like, he's so cute.
It's nice to have cute friends.
Oh yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody how to find you and how to find the Blasian March as well?
Yes, of course. You can find me personally at diaryofafirebird.com. How do I spell that? I can't spell out loud.
It's fine. I'll type it into the show notes.
Okay, great. Firebird.com. Instagram and Twitter are also Diary of a Firebird. And then for the Blasian March on all handles, all platforms, also TikTok as well. And then our website, blasianmarch.org, which will be hopefully properly launched in the new year.
Oh, nice.
Fingers crossed. But yes, we do have the domain, so that is active right now.
Yeah. I am aware that Blasian March LA has their own handle as well on the Instagrams.
Yes.
I don't know if the other chapters will have their own, but I do at least know that LA does.
Yeah, Blasian March LA. Check them out. Shout out to lead painter Kim for all that amazingness.
Yeah. That was a lot of balls to juggle from kind of being one of the few people that were out there at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you were still in Houston, I was in New York. I was like, we can like organize remotely and then
we'll show up.
We'll show up.
We'll show up.
And not miss our flight, do just things.
Oh, that's right. Oh God, I forgot about that. That's so
funny now. It's
funny now. It was very stressful the day of, but yes, you did miss your flight. We did get to meet up at the airport though, so
we did.
we can always say that we met at the rental car sidewalk. That's where we met in LA. All right. For everybody out there, don't forget that right now we have the Be Your Mixed Ass Self t-shirt available on the militantlymixed.com website. It is only available till November 14th. So by the time this airs, I think it's only like 2 weeks left for that to be available. So get your Be Your Mixed Ass Self t-shirt for 2022 now before it goes away. There is also a fundraiser for Militantly Mixed on GoFundMe. It's literally just easy to type in Militantly Mixed because that'll be the only thing that pops up. Than it is for me to try to read that weird link that they give you. And then of course there is also patreon.com/militantlymixed, where you can sponsor the show at a monthly or annual basis, and there are different rewards depending on which level you choose. But other than that, don't forget to follow Militantly Mixed on all the social media platforms at Militantly Mixed, and don't forget to be your mixed ass selves. Peace, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Militantly Mixed is a ManeHustle media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Sharmane Fury. Music is by David Bogan the One. You can follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Militantly Mixed. If you'd like to become a sponsor of Militantly Mixed, please go to patreon.com/militantlymixed for monthly sponsorship, or paypal.me/militantlymixed for a one-time only donation. And if you like what you hear on Militantly Mixed, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to be your mixed ass self. ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.